Here we are at Deadly Dozen HQ, which is a gym I set up around 10 years ago. It's called 5S Fitness. And this is Deadly Dozen Podcast 1. We actually did about 12 podcasts, didn't we, over Zoom? What actually happened was we filmed all these podcasts and essentially things just moved so fast. So we got to 12 podcasts in, we realized, hang on a minute, a lot of what we talked about isn't as relevant anymore. So we decided we're going to do it properly. We've got a full media team now, so we've got the cameras in the gym. This is our podcast studio in the evening, and we're going to do it right. And we have got a structure to the way we're going to do the podcast going forwards. However, alongside that, we're also going to have more general podcasts about Deadly Dozen news, what's happening in the world of Deadly Dozen and the Deadly Dozen community. So in this first episode, first thing we'll do is introduce ourselves. So I'm obviously Jay, I'm the founder and CEO of the Deadly Dozen. I came up with this idea a couple of years ago now, so the end of 2023, and we'll get into what the Deadly Dozen is. For those that don't know, obviously a lot of the people that will be listening to this podcast already do. And then we've got Bex here. A little bit about yourself, Bex.
So I'm a PT here at 5S Fitness, also a nutritionist, and been involved with Deadly Dozen once Jay got rolling with things and had booked the track at Macclesfield, and I'm involved in operations behind the scenes with our venues and vendors and anything that he's doing really with any Deadly Dozen upcoming races, and excited about the future.
And that's been key really, is the building one of the things that has been one of the key strengths for me is having the gym and having the community and having the coaches. Was it essentially built up the initial Deadly Dozen team. So it was when we set up the Deadly Dozen, obviously we launched this race and, I was heading everything up, but quickly it became apparent that we needed a full admin team, essentially. People that were a lot more organised than me. So I'm very good at coming up with ideas, I think, Deadly Dozen, being quite creative, thinking about the long-term plan, bit of a dreamer, head in the clouds. And I realised I needed the people that were good at administration, customer service, good at establishing venues, all the different aspects of the Deadly Dozen that we need to get done. So Bex is part of that team, and people also have heard of Vanessa. And we've got probably over 30 people now worldwide, various directors, and a core team that works out of this gym. So that's the intros. What we're going to go into is what the Deadly Dozen is. So the Deadly Dozen is a fitness race first and foremost. And I was literally stood there and chatting to a guy in the gym, and we're talking about fitness racing as a whole. I came up with the idea of we do 12 loops of the park, which is just over there. So anyone listening, I'm literally just pointing at a wall. So even for the viewers on the camera, it doesn't really make much sense. But over there behind me is a park, and there's actually a 400-meter loop. Yeah. And the way I used to build my 5K time, to go sub 20, which isn't crazy fast, but I thought that was really fast for me, is I'd do 12 by 400. And it's a brutal workout for anyone that's ever tried it. So from there I thought, right, add an exercise in between each. So we've got the 12 labours. It's like 12 labours of Hercules, that was the concept. Now there's lots of different fitness races, and I wanted to take an S&C approach, so strength and conditioning. How do I build a fitness race that essentially does the fundamentals of fitness? So the fundamentals of movements like squatting movements, pushing movements, pulling movements, single leg movements like the lunge, and also key bodyweight movements, or ones that we see in fitness racing like the burpee broad jump. We've got carries like the farmer's carry, the overhead carry, the front carry. I wanted it to only involve dumbbells, kettlebells, weight plates and body weight, because then it would be the most accessible fitness race, but also training methodology. So something that you can train for anywhere in the world, in your garage gym, home gym, at any gym in the world. You've got kettlebells, you've got dumbbells, you've got all these weight plates around me. And even if you don't have all of the equipment, you've just got a set of kettlebells, you can do the push press, you can do the goblet squat, you can do the farmer's carry, you can even do the overhead carry, just holding the kettlebell above your head. So that was essentially where the Deadly Dozen came from, which was, right, we've got this park, 12 times 400, let's put 12 exercises in between and create an order to them exercises. From there, it dawned on me that actually, rather than doing it on the park in Macclesfield opposite my gym, let's do it on athletics tracks. Fortunately, we've got a great athletics track in Macclesfield, and there's also, it's hard to estimate, but probably around 100,000 athletics tracks worldwide. So I'm quite a dreamer in a sense that I went, right, I've got a good idea for a fitness race. Let's launch a race. Let's then take it UK wide, and then let's try and make it global. And realistically, that was just naive optimism. But that so far, it's worked out so far. So obviously off the back of that, we went into the first season, which was, let me just turn myself around slightly like that. We went into the first season, which was 2024. And we started with a race in Macclesfield in June. And it was quite funny. We set up the registration software and we set up the website. So I originally built the website myself. And I was writing everyone's name on a whiteboard over there. So on the other end of the gym that I'm pointing towards. And every time we got a sign up, I wrote the name down. And for the first couple of months, you know, I was writing a name down, wasn't I? I was very proud of it. You know, there was 10 names, then 11, then 12. And I always said, and you can back me up on this, can't you, Bex? I said, if we get 50, I'm happy. 100, really happy. 200 would be a dream come true. Genuinely, didn't I? It wasn't
I
like,
remember it very well.
Right, we're, you know, it wasn't like we had this big investment and here we are, this huge company. So Deadly Dozen has been built with no investment, purely off the ticket sales we brought in off the first race and then subsequent ticket sales. All of a sudden, the race just blew up and we sold hundreds of tickets. Couldn't be bothered to write names on the board, far too much work. So it just sold out. And at that point, I decided that, right, do we, no one's going to sign up over the summer, right? So July, August, so we'll do a September race. That sold out in like a day, didn't it? Hundreds of tickets. Yeah. So we're like, right, let's do July and August though. People will be away, but some will do it. They both sold out. So we had 4 races that were essentially sold out. And that's where, fortunately, I had yourself, Bex, and other team members. We've got Rob, who's the kit man. He drives the van, tows the trailer. I've got a pickup truck. I don't think I'm very good at towing a trailer, so it's good that we've got Rob. And that was the first season, and it was successful. We were terrified. Well, I was terrified. I don't know about anyone else, that things were going to go. Is this race going to work? It might not work. So we did the season, and it all worked, and it went well. Great review. I mean, what do you think, Bex, of the first season?
I think the overriding feeling the night before the very first race was of calm. I think myself, yourself, and Vanessa were kind of the real core team at that moment, and it obviously quickly blew up, didn't it? But I remember being here on Friday being like, right, we're going to do this tomorrow. This is happening. And I remember thinking, obviously we'd advertised it extremely well. Vanessa got an amazing army of volunteers. The kit was ready. It was packed up. Every piece of all the pillars, or all the verticals, or however you want to term it, every element of the race was ready to go. And having done a bit of events and things for customers in a previous career, you can set up something amazing, but until you add people, you don't truly know how it's going to go, and little things can go wrong. But I remember thinking, we are set up so well. There's nothing we can do right now, even if you think about it, that could mean that we're going to have a disaster. It's going to go well. We're going to learn a lot. And fast forward to post-race, where we had a little chat, didn't we, in the car park at the athletics track. Debrief now, let's go. Everything we said was it'd be better if. Yeah. Because nothing, thankfully, went wrong, because we'd set it up, they're all we, had set it up so well. We thought of as much as we could possibly think of. The 3 of us on the day were talking to each other, make sure, are you all right? Do you need this? Let's do that. And troubleshooting, but minor, tiny things. It was so well set up. The race format works, the location worked, the vendors were amazing. People came down, it was a sunny day, people loved it. We had DJ, we had everything that needed to be. And then remember the next race, people were like, oh, next one, oh, another one. And you're like, yeah, can't wait. It's great. Like my reflection is of the whole thing, that it was smooth. Maybe your Stoic principles that we kind of, feed off, or what's the word, absorb from you. Maybe that rubbed off on us. And actually the stoicism that runs through the race as well meant that we delivered some fantastic races and only positive feedback. Yeah. I can't think of a single, being absolutely genuine, and I'm like you, I'm someone who, whatever you do, work-wise, life-wise, also 100% responsibility. I would be humble enough to say if we'd had any negative feedback about any element, I'd say it and be like, right, we're going to do this better. But everyone gave so many compliments. Like the first race, someone had not even heard of it before, maybe a month before, was like, oh, I thought it's been going for 2 or 3 years. Yeah. That's amazing. We've been going 24 hours. Yeah. And that, my reflection is, holy smokes, far exceeded your expectations. That 100 ticket sales expectation you had went way beyond that. Had more than 1,000 competitors, and then delivered in ways that you probably could never have imagined if you said, right, this is what's going to happen, I've got a crystal ball. And then off the back of that, the momentum swing into coming into 2025 and what we can achieve further afield, still at Macclesfield, globally, it's just, it's unbelievable. And I get friends and family saying, like, it's gone mad, hasn't it? Like, yeah, it's gone nuts.
No,
over the season.
We had 3,000. I think we're just short of 2,500 across that season.
Yeah.
Racing.
Yeah. It's nuts.
And it was, that was the worry with the race. Was there was two sides to the worry for me, which was it all clogs up on a race. So you've got a certain amount of equipment, and it starts clogging up, and everyone gets annoyed because there's no kit, and that would be really stressful. The other side was you get to an athletics track, and if you haven't been to an athletics track before, they're big. So you get there and you do a conservative wave time, and all of a sudden it looks like there's a few people bimbling around a track and there's a couple of people doing goblet squats and there's no atmosphere because you're outdoors and there's not as much music. And like Beck said, everything that we got in terms of feedback was like sprinkles. It was like, this is how you could sort of slightly improve this or do this. And not everything needed to be done. No. And one thing I was actually very sort of strict with was the fact that we are not the event that then adds more and more and more, right? We have stages, we have a light show, we have people on stilts and fire breathers. We're not trying to add more. We are the race that has minimal logistics. We're like a flat pack fitness race. Yeah. So the whole idea from the start was accessibility. The whole idea was a track is a purpose-built stadium that's relatively cheap to hire, it's got big parking, you bring a load of kettlebells, dumbbells and weight plates, a couple of 1,000 ton of kit, and you can execute a race. And essentially a Deadly Dozen is a track, flags, so these 3 metre flags that we have that mark out the labours and the start line and the finish line. So we don't have these big inflatable banners, start line and finish line. We don't have all that jazz that a lot of events have, where they're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds, but that allows us in a couple of vans to go around the UK. And it allows other people in other countries to do the same. So directors that are running the Deadly Dozen, they can scale rapidly. So that was the idea. So when someone said to us, you know what, you should have, a big inflatable start line and fireworks and everything. No, we don't want that. Less is more for the Deadly Dozen. We want someone to walk up to a track and go, right, there's an athletics track. There's the 12 labours in line. There's the flags that mark it out. We can see the red, black. We've got the Maury skull bell. We can clearly see that track is branded as Deadly Dozen. It's a fitness race and they're good to go. I
think it's really important. I'm thinking back to a memory that someone said to me when I was involved in a hockey charity is when you're establishing yourself as an events company or race or whatever you're trying to deliver in sports events and things, you've got to decide what you are, but you've also got to decide what you're not. I think especially when you're a startup, it could be business even, it can be, oh, you should do this, based on someone's experience that they want to insert, or this will bring you success, insert this. And you can go, oh, right, okay, yeah. Oh, let's get that then. Let's get an ice cream van. Let's get this. Let's get an inflatable banner. Let's get different merch or different kit, gold kettlebells, or anything that someone could think that will be better. You've also got to take some of that, haven't you, and go, thanks for your feedback. We're not changing anything. Yeah. Like not changing the labours, not changing that it's indoor, or that it's outdoors, indoor. You've got to just kind of, this is what it is, and you've been there from its very conception, haven't you? So you can decide what changes and what doesn't, and actually a lot doesn't.
And a whole manual was prior to, because I've published a few books prior training manuals, so it's, not particularly good writing, just this is how you squat, this is how you lunge. We put together a Deadly Dozen training manual, so the thought process that had gone into the race and the amount of times that we all did the race in the gym was ridiculous. So the race had been gone through time and time again. And I'm sure in future podcasts we'll talk about the intricacies of the race setup, what we tried to achieve. Otherwise, we'll spend hours here tonight if you get me talking about the way in which I designed the race. So that was the first season, and it went well, and there was no real hiccups. Nothing went wrong. We had St. John's Ambulance, which is like the medics that we have at events in the UK, and not a single injury was reported of note, so you might have had someone tweak the back slightly, but not a single injury. So it was a low risk event. People often said to me, oh, I bet the insurance is high. And I said, actually, we phoned the insurance, and the first thing they said to me was, is it an OCR event, obstacle racing? They said, are you going into water? No. Great. Are you climbing obstacles? No. Are you going up at height? No. We're on grass. You're never more than a couple hundred metres away from a water stop. You're running on a soft track. and we've got medics there that they can see everyone that's on the race. They're never more than a couple hundred metres. They're like, it's the most low-risk event you could do. The weights are fairly moderate. It doesn't cause much damage to anything, you know, there's a little bit of wear on the grass and that's it. So we've built this flat pack fitness race that works. And it's about adding the sprinkles now and doing things really well. And I think a big part of that is the global results that we're integrating now. Yeah. But it works, and now it's about just good execution every time and great customer service and building a community. Once that season was over, we then decided that I was sometimes a little bit, I always had this in mind when I wrote the manual, I had the gym races in mind. One of my considerations for it was that it could water down the brand, because whenever you're trying to tell a consumer or customer, right, this is our product, as soon as you know, basically release 20 more products, there's an element where they might go, so what's a Deadly Dozen then? Yeah. Is it a gym race? Does it involve rowing machine, or is it the track race? And the track race is the race. But we wanted, because we've got no specialist equipment on the race, so we don't use ergs, we don't use sleds, we don't use air bikes and dead balls and all this fancy equipment, which is fantastic and it adds to these races. We have a 400 metre run in between dumbbells, kettlebells, weight plates and bodyweight. Therefore, that run, which is why we called it a journey, which some people thinks is not great branding, I think it's all right. Labour, I think, sounds cool. People criticise that at first, especially because we have the U in it, so the Americans didn't like it. Labour's I'm completely happy with. Journey, I understand why people say, oh, journey's a bit naff, but it's because it can be a run, it can be a row. So we realised you can take out the runs and just have a deadly strong, so the 12 labours. And a lot of people have actually said that's harder than the track race, because it's a grip annihilation. You've got farmers carrying to deadlift, into dumbbell snatch, obviously dumbbell into hand, dumbbell lunges, into dumbbell snatch, so it's all massive on the grip. Then what you can do is just swap out the run for rowing machine, ski, bike erg and air bike, and just superset between them. We've even got an erg race where we combine the different ergs into one Deadly Dozen. Yeah. And what we've done is we've created what's called the gym races. So we've got this series of gym races and also a deadly fitness test, which is half of the labours, just 6 of the rep labours, and you can do whatever superset you like. So we've got this whole gym infrastructure. And what we did is we launched that after the first season, and we got gyms on board as an affiliates, and we've actually got over 100 affiliates worldwide now. So we've got over a dozen in America, we've got affiliates in Mexico, Canada, obviously we've got Malta, New Zealand, Italy, Australia, and they're running these gym races and they're going really well. But the problem we've got with all of it really is movement standards, quality assurance, and that's we know when we do the track race, we're in charge and we can do that well. And the biggest consideration for us now really is, can we get enough volunteers to judge? And, you know, are the standards good enough? When it comes to the gym races, we're putting so much trust in these gyms. So this is something that we're just working on currently. I mean, do you have much to say on the gym races, what you've seen, Bex? Or
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to try one. Yeah, definitely. It's not something I've done yet. I've done a track race, but not a gym race. And I think the thing that excites me about them is, like you said, when you set it up, the accessibility. Because find me a gym that doesn't have the kit already good to go. It's a case of organising it, selling tickets, getting chip timings and stuff like that, and making it happen really. So these affiliates can start running these events and putting great events on for their members really, really quickly without much investment probably. So again, really, really accessible. And I think you're right, we do have a fantastic army of volunteers that we know and have used all the track races so far, and they do a brilliant job of not just encouraging, but actually keeping those movement standards and making sure that when the global leaderboard is sorted, they are, you know, those results have the integrity we need them to have. And I think that with the types of people that are coming on board as affiliates and the types of gyms they're running, I'd like to hope and put trust sort of off the bat really, that they will run them with a real competitive nature. They probably do or have done other things where they've competed in different fitness racing, be that a different fitness race itself, and understand the importance of that. So I'd like to hope, I guess, that they deliver on that. And I think these communities are quite small as well, so if people aren't doing things right, you tend to know about it. Yeah. So, you know, hopefully that sort of propagates through the community and people, you know, stay honest and
Yeah, and
in
I
the
think
races.
what I always hope for with the gyms is almost like they're better at event organisation than me. You know, so if I'm like, right, I can get this track race going. If I get a gym that's, because I've had this gym now for 10 years and it's great, and we've got a good amount of members and it does all right, but it's in all honesty, I look at other gyms and I know how hard the gym trade is. So when I see another gym that's incredibly successful, I'm like, well, they must be pretty switched on.
Yeah.
Because the gym industry isn't easy. I own a PT academy and I've got my hands in a lot of baskets in the fitness industry. I've really tried to diversify because I know just how hard it is to earn a living as a PT and run a successful gym. So when I see these gyms that want to be affiliates of Deadly Dozen, maybe the Hyrox gyms and Deca gyms already, so they're already experienced in running events, I'm already got, that's almost like straight away they've got a good CV, because I'm like, well, if you can run a successful gym, then you've got something going for you. So straight away that's good. But yeah, I think our biggest hurdle now is movement standards and making sure, because although we've got a race that is the most accessible and probably the most scalable fitness race in the world. So right now, if we had demand for 10 more races in the UK, we could put 10 more on. We get the staff in to do it, because we could book, if you said to me, how many tracks could you book next week if you went all out? We could probably book 100 tracks around the country. Yeah. We literally could. Every weekend we could have 5 events. So the scalability is insane. And the cost of us to get the equipment, all it would be is having enough people to run these races for us. For enough team members to go and do it. So if the demand's there, we can supply it. So we've built a race that works really well. Its biggest downfall, or problems are opportunities to improve, right? And they're challenges, the obstacles, the way. The biggest obstacle for us is making sure we have good judges and movement standards. Because if we have a race that has, for example, ski and row, yes, you might row or ski with terrible technique, but fundamentally, you're not really cheating it. Whereas when it comes to an exercise that requires hip extension, knee extension, elbow extension overhead, then there can be a lot of cheating. So one of the things that is definitely a con to Deadly Dozen is the pro is we've got these movements that everyone does in a gym, which people like, because they go, right, I'm doing a goblet squat, doing a back squat, doing a kettlebell deadlift, well, that's a conventional deadlift. It translates to the core movements that we do in a gym. Yeah. It makes sense. However, these movements can be cheated. These movements can be half-repped. So that's our biggest challenge. And as we expand globally, which is what we're doing now, so we've gone from doing 5 events we actually did in the UK. We've now gone around the country. So this year we're doing London, so at Lee Valley, we're doing Oxford, Bristol, we're doing Birmingham, Alexander Stadium, biggest athletic stadium in the UK where the Commonwealth Games were. We're doing Edinburgh, Middlesbrough, Macclesfield again, obviously. The problem we've got is that, like I say, it's these standards can be, people are going to video these races. We're going to get all these spectators, and they'll look at these races. And if someone's half repping, everyone who's in the fitness industry knows now, or anyone in the fitness racing world knows that they go in hard, and people don't like it. And after our first season on Instagram, people give you a lot of grace when you're a new fitness race, but some of the comments when they see, a half rep, I mean, people get not just a little bit upset, they get violent, right? And they want your race shutting down. They're like, keyboard. How dare you allow someone to do a squat like that and get away with it? And people would message, and people were really unhappy. And at one stage, I was like, is our primary goal to get lots of people active and fitness racing and having a good time, and it's more about participation? And that is my biggest goal, is if we can get millions of people fitness, obviously it's a great business, but if we can get millions of people fitness racing, that's really the key, and that's a beautiful thing. However, if you're charging people to come and do a competition and you want to be taken seriously as a fitness racer, which we class as like a sport, the sport of fitness racing, then there has to be a standard and it has to be accountable. Now, then people will make the argument that that only matters for the elite level, but it doesn't, because even at the amateur levels or the lower levels, it's important to them. So yes, an elite time might be sub 45 minutes, but that person that's doing it in 90 minutes wants to know that the person that come in front of them wasn't cheating the race. So standards are not just important at the world-class level. Yes, we have to be even more accountable at a world-class level. They're important at every level. So this is our biggest hurdle as a race, is making sure that standards are kept up, both in the gyms, which it will never be to as high a standard as what we can achieve when we run it at Deadly Dozen HQ, and our directors run worldwide, but that's the big hurdle.
To an extent, we have to lean on the community as well, a little bit in these gym races and at the track sometimes. If there's ever a race out there in somewhere around the globe where there just isn't the judge for the first 5 reps of something because there was a bit of a bottleneck or whatever, which obviously we try to avoid. Again, it's putting a lot of hope and faith, but if a community does have that integrity and you have people that repeatedly do fitness racing, like we know people have done 20 Hyroxes, more even, double that, or maybe they've done 1 or 2. But those standards are so important to people. So hopefully people turning up to whether it's a Deadly Erg at their local S&C gym, hopefully they do go with that mindset that, okay, do it right, whether I'm judging, whether I'm participating, whether I'm spectating. Hopefully we can have a good community where that sort of thing does happen and not too much upload and mash your keyboard in anger. You know?
And it's integrity, but it's also like when we filmed my DFT the other day, I thought my reps were perfect. And then I was looking and thinking, actually, I could extend a bit more. And there's this belief, when I was speaking to a lot of people that come from the CrossFit world, especially, so they've been in this biosphere a long time with standards. Some people take an approach that it's almost malicious and it's cheating, and sometimes it is actually. Sometimes you do get people that genuinely want to cheat. I was almost like, no one really is going to. People will cheat, right? However, for the most part, people aren't that aware they're doing it. You know, so people were saying to me, you know, how dare these people? They were almost like, what a piece of this, and I'm like, you know, calm down a little bit. Yeah. But they see it as malicious, like you're cheating. You know, someone else is working really hard and they've trained for months, and that person's cheating, and they really don't like it. However, you actually find that a lot of these people don't realise that they're not fully extending. So we just need to keep trying to sort of create this ethos within our biosphere of Deadly Dozen fitness racing as movement standard, because our race is the race that's squat, lunge, push press, dumbbell snatch, weight plate clean and press. It's like standards, do these movements well. Because people actually said to me, when I consulted with judges from CrossFit and stuff, and DECA and people that are experienced, they said, well, maybe you should just say the weights have to clear your head and you don't have to extend. And then there's not a judging issue. And I was like, well, actually, what that does then is, how do you train in the gym? Everything becomes a half rep. I want the movements to be good. So it's an issue, but it's not a major issue. It's something we work with. And now that we're expanding globally, like I've said, we're in the US now, we're in Canada, we're in Mexico, we're in expanding across Europe, we're in Australia. So this weekend, we've got Johannesburg, South Africa, we've got obviously Middlesbrough, we've got Sydney, we've got Stellenbosch in South Africa. Next month we've got Chicago, we've got San Antonio in Texas, and we're relying on these guys essentially to maximize, make sure that the movement standards are there. So I went out to Texas, and in all honesty, they didn't have the vendors, they didn't have enough volunteers really, there was no fence around the track, it was a smaller track, so the spectators sort of had a bit of free reign. And what gave me a lot of confidence was it worked. So I flew out to Texas, a little bit jet lagged, not feeling too bad, rocked up, set up a little bit the night before, and then set up the next day, and it worked. And I was like, this is just like it was in Macclesfield, but in Texas, a little bit smaller, didn't sell as many tickets as we sold. And Bex, you went to South Africa. Yeah. And how was that?
Went to Cape Town, with Pip, one of the trainers here, and it was phenomenal. I mean, Cape Town itself is a magnificent city. The setting was extremely different to where you were on the same day. You were kind of backyard US, and we were down by, not far from the waterfront, if you know it at all. DHL Stormers Stadium, right opposite, brand new track, blue, lovely green grass in the middle, big stadium, new PA system. Pretty the Gucci end of stadia or venues that could be chosen. And it worked brilliantly, really, really good. There was a little bit of cajoling needed for the volunteers because it was the first time for them. There's quite a few people from the local gym that the race director knows, so there's a team of those guys, super chilled, but it got to about 5 to 9. I was like, come on, guys, you need to be getting out there. Come on, race is starting. Let's go. So Pip and I were there to obviously sort of kind of quality control and support, and we ended up running the finish line. And I think the thing that struck me was that so many things were the same and so many things were different. And it's quite beautiful in a way, what is different, because there is going to be, and I'm excited to see when the global directors all deliver in different countries, the race is the same. We know the race, we know the format. Venues can look different, but the people are going to be a little bit of the difference, or the way that the language that the race directors use in their social media and the types of humour or the tone of messaging and the people in the day, the sort of, it's maybe a bit too stereotypical, but I imagine with the Americans there's quite a lot of whooping and hollering and yeehaw and maybe all that kind of stuff. And in South Africa we had some brilliant volunteers that, multilingual people as well there. There's people that speaking to me in Afrikaans until I sort of looked a bit bewildered and then, oh, sorry, you're English, aren't you? Like, yeah. And then they'd take the mickey out of my accent because they're like, oh, you're English. Actual English.
When I was in Texas, I walked up to the hotel and I said, how do I get to the athletics track? And they just burst out laughing. And they didn't stop either. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on? And then when I left the hotel, there was no pavements anywhere. So I was like, where am I meant to walk? And they were like, yeah, there's no pavements. Like, you get in your truck, don't you, and drive. And I'm like, in the UK, I can leave my house and like run to the forest, like through Macclesfield town centre, down. You could pretty much walk anywhere. But in Texas, there was literally, where we were, which was a bit in the sticks, there was no paths anywhere. But it was fantastic. And like I say, what was amazing was in year 2, essentially, the second season, we had a race in South Africa and we had a race in Texas on the same day, which is crazy, because if I was to say, let's start 2024, we were hoping for 50 people on a track race in Macclesfield, right? So Macclesfield's an old industrial town. It's called the Silk Town. It was had mills that produced silk. I think one of the funnest facts of Macclesfield, it's the official end of the Silk Road from China, right? But it's not a town if you live 50 miles, 20, 30 miles away from Macclesfield, you don't know where Macclesfield is. Yeah. It's a small town. So there's a gym in a small town that you wouldn't know. So when we travel, when we're from Macclesfield, or you're called Maxonians, when you travel and someone says, where are you from? You say Manchester. Yeah. Because they're not going to know where Macclesfield is. So it's a small town. We come up with this race and we built this team, and Deadly Dozen HQ is a team essentially in a gym with no investment. And then less than a year later, what was it? Realistically, it was 9 months later, 8 or 9 months later, we've got track races in Cape Town and Texas on the same day, which is unbelievable. Yeah. And now it's time to just go dive in head first. We've got media team now, we've got guys doing everything, and it's like, right, let's go full steam ahead, see how big we can go. And obviously this is the first episode of the podcast, and like I said at the start of the podcast, we are going to have general chats like this, and this we've pretty much gone, right, everything we've done in the last 12 months, quick fire through. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a slight structure to the way we do the podcast. We want to interview people, have 6 questions that they can prep for, and what them questions do are they're not meant to constrain the podcast. What they're meant to do is essentially act like springboards. So it's a springboard for when I'm getting interviewed, the 6 questions, which we'll probably do as podcast 2. It's a springboard into a conversation, and we can bring different fitness racing, athletes from different sports, just interesting people, and we can do these 6 questions. So to finish today's podcast, I'll get the 6 questions out because I've not memorised them. Poor prep. So, like I say, all of these are springboards essentially. So question 1 is, what are your top 2 training tips? And the reason we've gone for 2, because obviously it's 6 and then there's 12 tips, branding, always thinking about the branding, 12. So what are your top 2 training tips? And I also like the way of doing top 2 because it's sort of, you have to think about 2. It's not this sort of general overview of, what is your training ethos? What are your top 2 tips? It's a great soundbite. That acts as a springboard into general training. So someone might say, I'm into zone 2 and then strength training, and they're the 2 sides. And I'm interested to see what people's answers are, and hopefully the audience will appreciate, right, we've got a fitness racer from Hyrox, or we've got a football player that's getting into fitness racing, or we've got a bodybuilder, and we can see the different answers. Question 2, what are your top 2 nutrition tips? Question 3, what are your top 2 mindset tips? So feel free to talk about any challenges you have faced in that question. Question 4, what are your top 2 tips that are not related to diet and exercise for improving the quality of someone's life? So we want to get a little bit of sort of mindset and also lifestyle into the podcast, dig into people. Question 5, how do you define success and what are your top 2 tips for achieving it? And question 6 is, what top 2 tips are you giving yourself for the future? And then there's one final tip, which is the 13th tip. And that's basically just give us one final tip and it can relate to anything. So the idea is we get 6 questions, 12 tips, so 12 tips overall, and then we have that 13th tip, one final thing to finish the podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to interview people from everywhere, all different backgrounds. We're going to do the 6 questions, 12 tips, and we're also going to have podcasts like this, which are general chats about Deadly Dozen news, where we're going, what we're doing, anything really. 2 streams to the podcast. But that's podcast 1. Yeah. Glad we've got it done. Like I say, lots got out there. Hopefully I've not waffled on too much. Looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback so we can keep improving this podcast, because like they say, you don't get good at podcasts till you've done a fair few hundred. Hopefully we get good at it faster than that.
Yeah, and so contact us if you're interested in coming on. It could be that you've got a really interesting story. So through the website, we've got a contact form on there.
Yeah, there's a contact form and you can fill that out and we'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Ready to rock with the Deadly Dozen podcast.